Amid the blazing sun and swirling dust of Willow Creek, Orion Steele, a millionaire brimming with ambition, collapses just before the groundbreaking ceremony for his dream school. Dr. Juniper Ray, the mysterious woman with a tear-stained past, must risk everything to save him. But can his heart survive the schemes waiting in the shadows? On a vast field as boundless as uncharted faith, Orion Steele donned a gray political vest, standing tall like a milestone under the scorching sun of Willow Creek, where the cracked earth mirrored countless broken promises. A makeshift podium rose beside a desolate foundation, like a canvas backdrop painted with childhood dreams. Rows of white folding chairs stretched out like a silken ribbon, gently rippling through a sea of people, where the curious eyes of children mingled with the skepticism of elders. Behind Orion, a banner with bold letters reading, "Together we build tomorrow," fluttered in the breeze, a faint heartbeat of hope beckoning. As he touched the microphone, his voice resonated, warm and fluid like a cool river breaking through barren land. His words soared. This school will not just be walls, but a lighthouse igniting dreams, piercing the air and planting seeds of belief in the listeners' hearts. Beneath his feet, red dust swirled like buried memories, yet Orion's smile shone radiant, a lotus blooming from mud. The crowd clapped, some lightly as if gently lending support, others forcefully as if demanding, "Don't forget we're watching." As his words hung in the air, a different rhythm pulsed in his chest, like a lone drum out of sync in a chorus. He paused, his gaze clouding, his hand gripping the wooden podium's edge, sweat dripping from his temple like a warning signal. He tried to speak, but his voice faltered. Suddenly he slumped forward, stumbling back. The crowd erupted like startled butterflies, their screams painting a chaotic scene. Security rushed in like fairy tale guardians, while some frantically dialed for help, phones flashing red like ominous stars. A stretcher appeared, hands lifting, Orion like a mystery unraveled mid-festival, whisking him into the fiery sunset toward Willow Creek Medical Station, a lonely farmhouse amid the prairie, where wind whispered through weathered windows and flickering fluorescent lights mimicked the place's faint breath. The doors burst open, shouts of emergency slicing through the icy corridor. Juniper Ray appeared, petite but with eyes sharp as steel, her steps resolute as she approached the stretcher, stethoscope pressed to the patient's chest, her ears attuned to each erratic breath. Delphine Snow, with neatly braided hair, observed silently, her solemn gaze like a phoenix hiding in ashes. Diagnosing a heart attack, Juniper's voice rang calm yet urgent. "We can't transfer him. We act now." Her commands echoed relentlessly, each word a needle piercing the quiet. Clot-busting drug, oxygen at 30%, prep the portable EKG. Her hands moved deftly, like an alchemist blending remedies, orchestrating each squeeze of the ombu bag, monitoring heartbeats on the screen. As if reading a medical scripture, Orion Steele's heart, once faltering, stirred awake in the makeshift operating room. The monitor's beep 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 rang clear, a signal of hope as color slowly returned to his cheeks. Marin Tate stood nearby, her eyes refusing to betray emotion, then nodded slowly, her burdened face softening with a hint of gratitude. "You saved him." Finally, as the lights shifted from harsh red to soft white, Orion opened his eyes amid the antiseptic scent, meeting Juniper Ray's calm, unflinching face. He realized his fate was being rewritten, not by empty promises, but by hands skilled at steadying a wayward heart. In the secluded emergency room of Willow Creek Medical Station, fluorescent lights flickered like a weary heartbeat, the air thick with the mingled scents of antiseptic and rotting wood. Urgent footsteps echoed on the cold tile floor as Juniper Ray burst in, her eyes blazing with determination, like an eagle gathering strength to soar. She leaned over the stretcher amid the chaotic scene, her hand touching the patient's neck with the urgency of a conductor leading an orchestra of life and death. "Blood pressure 21, breathing erratic, I need clot-busting drugs now." Her voice cut through, sharp but steady, like a spear piercing the night. Beside her, Marin Tate glared with skepticism. These steps are too risky, no cath lab, no support team. He could die on this makeshift table. Marin's words were a chilling gust threatening to snuff out the candle of hope, weighing the air heavier. But Juniper shook her head, her eyes burning with the fire of defiance. If we wait for an airlift, who can guarantee this heart attack won't finish him before the chopper arrives? Time is against us. Murmurs rippled through the medical team like crashing waves as she issued a calming command. Delphine Snow prepped the med bag. Marin, stop watching. Help me with the catheter. Delphine Snow, the local nurse with gentle yet resolute eyes, bent down, her hands swiftly flipping open a stainless steel tray, revealing a scatter of syringes like warriors ready for battle. She handed it to Juniper with a subtle nod, a silent ally in their life or death mission. Marin took a deep breath, then slowly picked up the instrument tray, passing needles, securing valves, and activating the oxygen ventilator. The room fell silent, save for the rhythmic squeeze of the ambu bag and the monitor's urgent beep beep beep. For a moment, time seemed to freeze, the breaths of everyone blending with Orion Steele's heart teetering on the edge of life and death. Juniper deftly mixed the clot-busting drug into a syringe, her trembling arm the final sign of her resolve, then injected it into the patient's vein. In that instant, the fluorescent light flared like a lightning bolt, each drop of medicine a hopeful arrow piercing dark clouds. Meanwhile, Delphine monitored blood oxygen levels, her hand darting to adjust valves, the patient's heart rate tracing a jagged line on the graph like stormy seas. Suddenly, the curve lifted delicately, then steadied, the monitor singing a clear beep beep beep, a symphony of rebirth. The tension dissolved, and Juniper exhaled, her shoulders relaxing like sails catching a favorable wind. Marin stared at the screen, her eyes misty but her face still stern, then slowly nodded. You saved him. Her admission warmed the room like sunlight through leaves, marking a triumph of skill and courage. In a fleeting moment of peace, Orion Steele stirred on the stretcher, his eyes opening, his gaze toward Juniper filled with gratitude and awe. Under the dim light, her expression remained calm, her words simple, just doing my job. The phrase, brief yet profound, echoed like an eternal hymn of sacrifice. As the emergency room doors slowly closed, only the faint echoes of the life and death battle lingered, and in each heart a renewed desire burned to keep beating for other fragile lives. In a silence as delicate as thin ice, Orion Steele slowly opened his eyes. His breath faint like a breeze slipping through a door's crack, carrying the sterile scent of antiseptic, tinged with the chill of a long night. The flickering fluorescent light above cast a dim glow on his barely open eyes, like a weak flashlight searching for an escape from darkness. For a moment he furrowed his brow, trying to pull himself from the hospital bed like a man drifting off an iceberg. But a wave of dizziness yanked him back, rendering his existence as fragile as a soap bubble on water. Beside him, a cold voice cut through, dry and sharp as a honed blade. Don't move yet, steady and devoid of softness. Juniper Ray appeared, her posture rigid like a pine enduring a bitter wind, pristine in blue scrubs, her hair tied back neatly like a still wind. She kept a precise distance, never encroaching on the patient's space, her eyes holding only clinical data, no trace of admiration or curiosity. Like someone long accustomed to witnessing miracles, Orion strained to lift his gaze, trying to memorize her face, not that of a heroic doctor, but of someone simply doing their job. Hesitantly, he rasped, "You? Who are you?" His voice was hoarse, like wind howling through a window's gap, each word falling dry and staccato. Juniper didn't glance at him, replying curtly, "Juniper Ray, I've been monitoring your heart all night." Her answer was an icy barrier halting conversation, blunt but honest. He waited for a spark of warmth, a nod of encouragement, or at least a compassionate glance, but she remained frozen, leaving an empty void between two souls accustomed to spotlight and praise. Marin Tate appeared at the door, her small frame heavy like an ancient boulder, hands cradling a tray of medications, silently observing before retreating into the shadows, a witness to a quiet medical revolution. Delphine Snow stood in the corner, her movements gentler, her eyes glimmering with subtle concern, like soft waves lapping the shore. But neither approached, as the line between doctor and millionaire patient had been drawn cleanly by Juniper Ray, like a straight pen stroke on white paper. Orion tried to smile, his voice tinged with regret. "Thank you for saving my life." But his gratitude drifted like a dry leaf on a lake, failing to ripple warmer waters. Juniper finally looked at him. Her gaze didn't soften, merely registering data. "I just did my job." The brief statement was a flat confirmation, yet in that moment he glimpsed a strength not in flattery, but in unadorned truth. The silence that followed was thick, a wall separating two worlds, Orion Steele's fleeting realm of glamour and Juniper Ray's austere domain of expertise. Then she stepped back, leaving him in the room where only the steady hum of the heart monitor and the ticking of life's clock remained. He watched her figure disappear, wondering if she'd ever let a ray of warmth melt the ice around her heart. In that instant, her coldness became the ink sketching a yearning for connection, stirring his newly saved heart to pulse with a desire to unravel the enigma behind the name Juniper Ray. In the quiet moment along the drowsy corridor of Willow Creek Medical Station, Orion Steele softly asked Marin Tate about the constant chill in Juniper Ray's eyes, as if yearning to pierce the icy layers she hid behind. Marin paused, gripping the wooden stair rail, her voice low like a small waterfall splashing over stones, recounting a ceremony eerily similar to today's. A groundbreaking bathed in sunlight, white folding chairs stretching endlessly under a sky that offered no answers. "Juniper Ray was only 13 then," she said, her gaze distant, like a sunset staining the horizon purple. "She stood exactly where you collapsed, in a worn dress clutching a balloon as if it were her fragile hope." Her voice hummed like a flute pouring into the silent space, summoning memories like the first raindrops of the season, falling on dry leaves. It was the day a city millionaire had taken the podium, his voice booming like temple bells, vowing to build the grandest, brightest school for Willow Creek's children. Banners fluttered, chairs gleamed under the sun, and hundreds of hopeful eyes awaited his promise. But as excavators broke ground, weeks turned to months, months to years, and the site fell silent, a graveyard of dreams. Young Juniper Ray had watched the foundation decay, steel beams rusting to the color of sand, her aspirations wilting with each unlaid brick. Marin recounted, her lips trembling, how children wandered the barren ground, asking why the man never returned, met only with a cold, brick-wall silence. From then on, a steadfast stake was driven into Juniper's heart. Every promise must be backed by action, and her gaze settled like a still, rippleless lake. The gate between the solar plexus in her heart, Orion listened, his heart sagging like a sail without wind, wondering how much trust, fame, and wealth could buy if their bearer didn't stay. Delphine Snow approached from the corner, silently handing Marin a steaming cup of tea, its vapor rising like a warm fragrance in the lonely winter, as if to soothe the old wounds that had sparked such hopes. Marin smiled, her eyes glistening with a tear already dried, and continued, "She doesn't hate hope, you understand. She hates those who speak golden words and vanish, leaving the kids to patch their dreams with broken bricks." Her words lingered, a mournful note in life's symphony. Orion suddenly felt like that stranger, carrying a suitcase of plans, but forgetting to seal the valve of commitment, letting the village's dreams slip away. He recalled Juniper's gaze through the hospital room's door, neither tearful nor admiring, only a stern vigilance, like moonlight without a lure. He realized that to melt her icy barrier, he had to reach her past, not with hollow apologies, but with persistent action, like planting seeds in a desert and waiting for them to sprout. Under the faint light from the window, Orion murmured, "I don't want to be just a passerby." His voice wavered, but was earnest. like a flawed mirror for unfulfilled promises. Marin nodded, then led him to the doorway where the morning breeze slipped through, dispelling some of the gloom of memory. "If you want to prove it, show her," she said, as if handing him the key to unlock Juniper Ray's heart. In that moment, Orion knew he had to stand where that 13-year-old girl's hopes had been shattered. Not to replay the drama, but to build a new chapter, a living promise amid the ruins of broken foundations. Thus, Juniper Ray's sorrowful memory intertwined with his resolve to change, igniting a desire to heal old wounds, so hope would no longer be a fleeting illusion, but a solid reality. As the rooster's crow echoed from the village church at dawn, Orion Steele stepped out of the rented room above the hardware store, a scarf draped over the Steele Enterprises sign in his hand. He shed the Millionaire's persona, introducing himself as Mike to the shopkeeper, hesitantly asking for directions to the old village school where children still crowded around rickety desks. The name Mike rang out quietly like a simple country tune, free of grandiose flair, putting listeners at ease with its familiarity. He slung a backpack over his shoulder, carrying a notebook filled with loose sketches of a modest school, pastel green classrooms, a playground with soft sand, wheelchair ramps, and a cozy library nook. Walking along the gravel path, cracked plaster houses came into view, each door slightly ajar, villagers eyeing him warily. An older couple shielded by conical hats offered a cautious smile and a nod from afar. "There, need any help?" Soft and distant. Just then, Mike pulled out his notebook, gently asking, "What do the kids need most in the new school?" The wife clasped his hand, her voice low as she shared, "We just want our disabled boy across the class to wheel himself to school without needing help." Mike listened intently, his face focused like a carpenter measuring prized wood, swiftly jotting down her words. Next, he visited the old school, a makeshift shack of plywood, its peeling walls shedding chalky dust, textbooks worn with faded smudged text. A group of 9-year-olds huddled around a torn book, their eyes clear as a lotus pond. Mike knelt by the podium, asking about their favorite activities. A girl with sparkling eyes mentioned the old piano that's broken, with no one to fix it. A boy whispered about playing basketball in the muddy rain, impossible to enjoy. He scribbled diligently, his hands swaying like an artist painting everyday life, occasionally flashing a smile that sparked laughter from the kids, their clear giggles dispelling clouds of doubt. By afternoon, Mike stopped by the medical station, where Delphine Snow was diligently administering shots. She looked at him, surprised, asking not about COs or headlines, but simply, "How's everything here for you?" In her eyes, he saw untainted sincerity, not the glow of fame, just an encouraging smile. He nodded, murmuring, "I want the new school's clinic to have enough medicine and twice the beds." Delphine jotted down his words, her gentle smile fueling his resolve. As dusk painted the dry rice fields purple, Mike paused at the community center. He spread his notebook on an old wooden table, sketching a playground encircling an ancient tamarind tree with stainless steel swings and wooden benches. From inside, curious kids peeked through the door, chiming in, "Draw a spot for lotus flowers and ducks swimming in a little pond." Their chatter, like fledgling birds, sparked endless inspiration in him. At night, under the glow of lanterns hung by the houses, Mike stood before a topographic map, comparing land slopes and drawing safe wheelchair pathways. Finally, he set down his pen, gazing at the notebook now thick with ideas, like a farmer watching seedlings sprout. In that moment, he realized joy didn't lie in fame, but in listening and recording carefully, ensuring every small need of the village was woven into the design. Orion Steele's steps, now just Mike in the heart of Willow Creek, were quiet, unassuming. He wove through dirt paths, the croak of frogs rising from nearby ponds, the church bell faintly chiming in the distance. His notebook brimmed with the villagers' words and children's voices, forming the foundation for a green school, built not just of bricks and cement, but of thoughtful hearts and shared action. In the tender dawn, with dew still clinging to blades of grass, Orion Steele, now simply Mike, led Juniper Ray to the new plot where the foundations of Sunrise Elementary were taking shape, like an underground spring ready to surge. He unfurled a rough blueprint before her, its delicate lines like silken threads, marking the start of a wordless yet profound collaboration. Juniper tilted her head, her gaze a compass guiding the way, each ink mark on the paper signaling medical needs. An emergency room at the heart of the layout, near the entrance for swift ambulance access. A counseling room, serene as a quiet garden. And a temporary isolation area, where patients' emotional storms could find calm. The tap-tap of his pen sounded like a soundtrack to their trust-building drama. He didn't boast of charity or social enterprise with grandiose flair, but asked earnestly, "Where do you think we should prioritize?" The question, light as a breeze through leaves, planted a springtime of faith in her heart. Juniper exhaled softly, her lips curving slightly, like a musician finding the perfect note. "The emergency room needs to be on the ground floor, so no one fumbles upstairs when every second is gold." Before they could settle into their harmonious rhythm, the meeting hit a rough patch. A weary parent, slight as a drooping willow, fixed Orion with a piercing look. "Do you know my family can't afford to chip in for this fancy medical unit?" Her words swept through the delicate blueprint like a gale tearing a silk curtain, unsettling every line. The air grew heavy, the children's eyes brimming with worry, awaiting his response. Without a moment's hesitation, Orion folded the paper, his gaze piercing the villagers' aspirations. "We'll build within a practical budget, prioritizing essentials first, and seek reasonable funding for the rest. I won't let any child leave the new school without proper desks or basic medical supplies." His voice rang like a sword slicing through darkness, dispelling doubt. In the sudden stillness, only the rustle of falling leaves remained, and Delphine Snow whispered, "He's not making empty promises." They pressed on, each of Juniper's suggestions a precious gift laid on the drafting table. Swivel chairs for the counseling room to feel gentle, lighting bright but not harsh, medicine shelves flush against walls to save space. He listened, meticulously noting every detail, his pen strokes soft yet decisive, like a sculptor's hand. The midday sun filtered through the old tamarind tree, illuminating the worry lines on Juniper's forehead, marks of sleepless nights, tending patients, now transformed into sketches, embodying safety for children. As the cool afternoon breeze swept in, the plan evolved. A medical room integrated with a mental health support area, a rest space for stressed students, a sealed isolation unit for hygiene, and a small nook for easy parent access. Juniper turned to Orion, her eyes reflecting a castle of collective dreams now built on the bedrock of trust. She offered a rare smile, a lightning bolt breaking through clouds. "At last, we've designed a place that heals not just physical wounds, but souls." Soft applause rose from Marintate, who placed a hand on Juniper's shoulder as if passing strength to her and the project. Orion felt his heart beat stronger, not from pride, but from envisioning students attending class with ease, parents entrusting their children with peace. In that moment of harmony between words and deeds, hope and reality, they were no longer latecomers but partners, together weaving a vibrant future where every child's laugh testified to an enduring faith. As a ferocious storm crashed over Willow Creek like nature's shattering drums, the sky blazed with lightning carving deep scars into the earth, and winds roared like chaotic waves. Orion Steele clung to the medical station's railing, the tin roof rattling overhead as if ready to tear free. The glass door slammed shut behind him, wind howling through its cracks like twisted silver silk. Inside, emergency lights flickered, illuminating the anxious faces of Nurse Delphine Snow, her hair plastered with rain and sweat, her breath rapid like a low, trembling cello. She shouted, "Move the patients to the safe room now." Her voice was a spear thrust through the chaotic darkness. Before anyone could nod, Delphine charged forward, her shoulders straining as she lifted stretchers. Marin Tate emerged from a corner, flashlight in hand, her eyes sharp like a calm specter in the night. She scanned the corridor, directing patients to the basement's thick-walled shelter, a refuge against the bone-chilling storm. Rain poured like a deluge, each drop hammering the metal roof in a steady rhythm, a drumbeat marking life and death time. Then, a desperate cry pierced through the main door. "Help! 2 kids are trapped!" Juniper Ray sprang up, her eyes blazing with resolve like a meteor streaking through the night. Without a second's pause, she twisted the glass door's handle and plunged into the roaring rain. Orion followed close, his heart pounding like war drums, his feet slipping on the flooded concrete, yet he pressed on. 2 trembling children, their torn raincoats flapping, huddled under a rotting awning, icy water seeping into their skin like 1,000 needles. Juniper rushed forward, her gaze carrying the boundless breath of the sea. She scooped up the little girl while Orion carefully lifted the boy, his hands trembling from cold and fear but never faltering. Under flashing lightning, his face bore exhaustion and determination, a warrior heedless of danger. A gust knocked him down, but he sprang up, wading through puddles littered with broken glass, carrying the 2 small lives to safety where Delphine waited with warm blankets and fever reducers. The rain pounded the roof like heaven's tears, and from the corridor Marin shouted, "Hurry! Their mother's trapped on a rooftop across the bridge!" Her flashlight swept over a crumbling wall, revealing a woman weakly waving. Without hesitation, Juniper yanked Orion to his feet, guiding him through the emergency room. She slipped on boots and waded through knee-deep water. He turned to her, her eyes like a misty lake, reflecting a silent warrior unshaken. On the way to the crumbling house, winds lashed so fiercely it was hard to breathe, tiles clattering down, and Orion felt his heart might burst. He stopped, locking eyes with her. "I'm going with you." His words erupted like a volcano. She nodded, her lips parting in a cold smile, the smile of someone who let no emotion slow her steps. They pushed through inky floodwaters, past toppled houses, and under a final flash of lightning they spotted the mother, perched precariously on the roof, clinging to a swaying utility pole like a reed in the gale. Orion climbed first, extending both arms to catch her, while Juniper hoisted the boy, then guided mother and son down the shattered tiles. When all 3 reached the ground, Delphine and Marin had blankets and first aid kits ready. The wind still wailed outside, but inside the station warmth bloomed like an unexpected spring. Juniper knelt, wiping sweat and mud from Orion's forehead with a warm cloth. He tried to smile, but a cough racked him, and she eased him into an iron chair. "You idiot, you could have died again." Her voice mixed scolding with tender care, like warm water melting frost. In the moment their eyes met, amid the storm and their courage, they understood that lives are sometimes saved by the most reckless acts, and that humanity is the only light that never fades in the fiercest night. As the first spring dawn filtered through the classroom windows, its rays like delicate silk draped across the white walls, Orion Steele stood quietly by the schoolyard's edge, gazing at Sunrise Elementary shimmering in the morning mist. The red brick walls glowed like a heart brimming with hope, the tiled roof rippling like a living pulse intertwined with the gentle breeze. Around him, students streamed into class, their laughter crisp like shattered crystal, while parents sat on benches, their eyes blooming with anticipation like flowers awaiting spring. He wore a simple white shirt, a pair of worn work gloves in hand, bearing the marks of construction, his heart swelling with a pure joy almost too vast to name. At the modest inauguration ceremony, Juniper Ray appeared beneath the flamboyant tree, her presence serene as a cool stream flowing through parched stones. She held a small pair of scissors, sleek like a butterfly's wings, poised for flight, her eyes glistening with emotion. As the Parents' Council chair invited her to the dais, each step she took was a lingering note in the hushed air. stirring the hearts of onlookers. Orion smiled faintly from the guest rows, his eyes following her like an explorer rediscovering a forgotten treasure. The brief introduction rang out. Today we witness a miracle, from barren foundations to a school whole with humanity. Applause erupted like sparkling fireworks, but as Juniper placed the scissors on the emerald ribbon, all sound hushed, leaving only the snip of the blades, a heartbeat of renewed faith. The ribbon fell in tatters, like fragments of broken promises swept away, revealing a bright, open path. Cheers flooded the schoolyard, children surging forward like fledgling birds taking flight, while parents wiped tears like morning dew. After the ribbon cutting, Aurora Sky, a girl with braids long as kites, ran to the podium, her clear eyes fixed on Orion and Juniper. She clasped her hands into a heart shape, shouting, "Thank you for building our school." In that moment, he knelt to lift her, the child's warmth filling him with a spring breeze's peace. A year later, the school had blossomed further, with a garden of sunflowers and cosmos, its back wall adorned with murals painted by students, telling the story of seeds of hope. Across from it stood the new Willow Creek Medical Center, a pristine white brick building with a dignified sign at the gate, where Juniper now served as director. Each morning she visited the garden, brushing petals as if soothing old wounds, her heart light as autumn's last falling leaf. One warm afternoon, Orion led her down the red brick path, pausing at a wooden bench by the flagpole. He turned to her, eyes brimming. "Juniper, you taught me to see the world through action, not words." His words, a gentle yet profound arrow of affection, warmed her heart like sunlight on cold soil. She looked at him, a faint smile playing on her lips. "You proved that the day you braved the storm with me." She reached for his hand, and in that warm clasp no further words were needed. A month later their wedding unfolded in the schoolyard, where tape had given way to curtains of hydrangeas, and chairs were arranged for guests. Aurora Sky, in a white dress like a young butterfly, tiptoed to hand them the rings, sparking delighted laughter. Marin Tate and Delphine Snow stood by, beaming like summer sun, their eyes, once witnesses to chaotic nights, now brimming with joy. As Juniper walked beneath arches of golden flowers, Orion welcomed her, their kiss amid applause a radiant symphony of love. At dusk, as twilight stained the school purple, Aurora Sky chased her puppy around the yard, trailing the faint glow from classroom lights. In that scene, Orion and Juniper leaned into each other, gazing toward an open future. Beneath the flagpole, a sign gleamed, "Sunrise Elementary, where promises become reality." Its golden light a reminder that anything built with a steadfast heart can withstand any storm. Having heard Juniper Ray's arduous journey from Willow Creek through the storm and witnessed Orion Steele's steadfast determination, we truly feel the power of faith, compassion, and hope. Thank you for watching Millionaire and Heart Stories, featuring Marin Tate, Delphine Snow, and Aurora Sky.